Hi everyone, welcome to DIY with Nancy. Well, today I'm going to share with you my recipe for my rustic homemade bread. Now, I love making this bread for a few reasons. One, it's homemade, it's delicious, and I know what's in it. Two, it's easy to make. And three, my husband always asks me for it. So I'm going to show you how to make this homemade rustic bread that's so simple to make, and I'm going to show you how to make it step by step. So stay with me and let's get to the ingredients.
The ingredients you'll need to make my homemade rustic bread. To start, I have 3.5 cups of all-purpose flour and an additional tablespoon of all-purpose flour for dusting. Next, you'll need 1 tablespoon of active dry yeast, 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, and 2 cups of lukewarm water. I'll also list these ingredients in the description box down below. Moving on to the first step. I'm going to start off with placing the active dry yeast into the lukewarm water. I'm going to take a little whisk, mix it together until it's well combined. Then you're going to set it aside for 10 minutes, let the yeast activate, and move on to the next step. For the next step, once your yeast is activated, you're going to start mixing all the ingredients, starting with the all-purpose flour. I'm going to add the kosher salt. I'm going to take a spoon. I'm going to mix together the salt and the all-purpose flour. And once you've mixed it together, you're going to add the activated yeast. Pour it all in. I just like to make sure all the yeast is in there. And now with a wooden spoon, I'm going to combine all the ingredients in this bowl to make this dough. Now there's no kneading, you're just going to bring the mixture together until the dough forms, which is going to form a very sticky dough. I'm going to continue mixing for about 2 minutes, and then I'll show you what the dough looks like once it's formed and ready to rise. Now the dough has come together. Just going to remove the excess dough from my wooden spoon. I've mixed the dough until I didn't see any more flour. This dough is very, very sticky. Now at this point, my dough is ready to rise and I'm ready to move on to the next step. Now for the next step, I'm going to place a piece of plastic wrap over the bowl, seal it tightly so I can keep the warmth in. I'm going to let it rise in a warm place for about an hour to an hour and a half, or until it triples in size, and then I'll show you the next step. Now here's the dough. I had it rising for about an hour and a half. At times it can take less time. I had it in my oven with the oven light on, but the oven off, and it rose perfectly. Now I'm just going to remove the plastic wrap from the dough, as you can see, and I want you to see how loose this dough is. It's going to be nice and airy. It's perfect. Now, what I'm going to do is use the tablespoon of all-purpose flour to dust the parchment paper that I have in a prepared bowl here. And the bowl is just going to take the shape of the dough. And I'm going to take some of the all-purpose flour and place it in the bowl with parchment paper. So I'm going to place it at the bottom of the parchment paper because eventually what I'm going to do is transfer the dough onto the parchment paper. Now, as mentioned earlier, the dough is really sticky. To avoid it sticking from my hands, I'm using the tablespoon of all-purpose flour on my fingers to loosen the edges of the dough before I transfer it to the bowl with parchment paper. And that way, it will just loosen up easily and be placed onto the dough, just as I'm going to do it here. So now I'm going to take the bowl, flip the dough right onto the parchment paper. As you can see, there's no kneading involved. And the dough gets placed right into the bowl, just like that. So now I'm going to let the dough rest. All I'm going to simply do is place a tea towel on the dough, let it rest for about 15 minutes. So I'm going to set it aside and I'm going to show you the next step. Now for the next step, I have an 8-quart Dutch oven. You can see it's pretty deep. Place your dough in there. I'm going to preheat the Dutch oven at 450 degrees while the oven is preheating for about 8 to 10 minutes or so it's nice and hot before I place the dough in. Now you want to make sure you use your oven gloves when you're removing it so you don't burn yourself. So let's get it in the oven. Now I had the Dutch oven in the oven for about 8 minutes. As you can see, I'm using my oven gloves. This is extremely, extremely hot. I'm going to simply take the dough, and this parchment paper really helps. So I'm going to remove the dough from the bowl, place it in the Dutch oven. And at this point, you want to, like I mentioned, you want to be very, very careful. I'm using my oven gloves just to handle the Dutch oven. And all I'm going to simply do is score it with a lame. And you could score it whatever way you want. You can just place one score right along the center. But before I do that, I'm going to dust some of the all-purpose flour, which is that 1 tablespoon I set aside. Place a little bit on the top. It's going to give that crispiness on the top of the dough, that rustic look. And now I'm just going to score the dough with the lame just on the top. I'm going to do like 3 scores right on the top. And like I said, you can do 1 however you want to do it. Now, once you're finished scoring your dough, you're going to place the lid on the Dutch oven. Place it in the oven at 450 degrees. That's been preheating. Again, you want to use your oven gloves. You don't want to burn yourself. I'm going to place it in the oven at 450 for 30 minutes. And then I'm going to remove it and remove the lid from the Dutch oven, place it back in the oven for another 25 minutes. And of course, I'm going to show you that step. So let's get the dough in the oven.
Okay, everyone, after 30 minutes, I'm removing the lid from the Dutch oven. You can see that the bread has a nice light golden color, but I'm placing it back in the oven for another 25 minutes, and I've reduced my temperature to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm going to place it back in the oven for another 25 minutes, and I'll show you what it looks like when it comes out of the oven and it's ready. Okay, everyone, here is the bread out of the oven. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it cool. But before I do, I don't want it to cool in the Dutch oven. So I'm going to remove the bread. And this is why you don't have to use the parchment paper, but it makes it so much easier. I'm just going to place the Dutch oven aside. Look at this bread. Look how beautiful it looks. Now the homemade bread is completely done. It's nice and crispy and crunchy on the outside. It's soft and fluffy on the inside. I'm gonna let it cool and set for about 10 minutes. Then I'm gonna cut into it and show you how delicious and fluffy this homemade bread really is. Okay, everyone, the bread has been resting for about 10 minutes. Look at this. It's just an amazing bread. So easy to make. Enough with the talking. We gotta cut into this bread, and I'm gonna show you what it looks like. Look at this. Look at the airy pockets in the bread. So soft. Look at this. Look at that beautiful bread. I'm just gonna cut a small piece and bite into it. Oh my gosh. This bread is absolutely good. Look at this. The bottom of the bread, there's some excess flour. You can remove it. It's an absolute delicious bread and easy to make at home. All you need is 4 ingredients and you get this delicious, beautiful homemade bread right at home. And there you have it, everyone. That is my homemade bread recipe. That is a rustic looking bread, crispy on the outside, soft and airy on the inside. Look at this. Look at that bread. It's so easy to make at home. Why not try a homemade bread recipe that is easy, no need, some waiting time as far as, letting the dough rise. It's soft, delicious, and so worthwhile making. I hope you all enjoyed my recipe for my homemade bread. And if you did, don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, thanks so much for watching, everyone. Take care. I'm gonna have some more bread in itself. It's just so worth having on its own. So good.